Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mayor Greg Fischer podcast. I'm Greg Fischer, the mayor of Louisville. Today, we're going to get an update on a really promising piece of work to reimagine public safety in our city, and we're calling that the Deflection Program. We're running a pilot on that right now. Unfortunately, what we've seen is a rise over generations with people expecting when they call a police officer that police officer can take care of everything, whether it's homelessness issues, mental health issues, domestic violence issues. It's unfair to our police officers. We're asking them and expecting way too much from them. And it's not smart either. So meanwhile, our society has just not done a great job of helping people with mental health issues. And there also still is some stigma around mental health that we're working hard to eliminate. So what happens far too often is that people with mental health issues end up in a criminal justice system that just isn't designed for them or designed to help them. And no one is better off for that. So our work in reimagining public safety is to create the hard change that's clearly needed to address the systemic shortcomings that have just manifested themselves over these past several years and several decades. Our deflection pilot is an important piece of that reimagining public safety work, as well as our whole of government approach to public safety. Today, I'm joined by Jody Meiman. Jody is our Executive Director of Emergency Services. He's been a central figure in getting the deflection pilot up and running. Welcome, Jody.
Thank you, sir, for having me.
And before I start, I want to give a shout out to Director Meiman and his entire team for their response to the tragedy in Western Kentucky. They mobilized at 3:30 in the morning to go down there before first light and get to work on the rescue and recovery mission at the candle factory. So you guys did an amazing job. We're proud and grateful for you all, and anything we can continue to do to help the people of Western Kentucky. I know we're going to do it, and you're certainly going to do that as well. So Jody, I know a part of your agency includes our hardworking 911 team. In the course of a day, how many calls are related to mental health issues, and how are those traditionally handled?
So if you think about it, we take in 2020, we took in just a little bit less than 1.5 million calls in our 911 center, and 800,000 of those were emergency calls. On average, on an average day, we take in about 55 calls that require the police's crisis response team to go and help out. So when a 911 call comes in, the 911 call taker asks a series of questions, and then as it qualifies for that CIT response, it's sent over to the police department now for a response from whoever's in that division. Sometimes it may be a CIT, or all of them, LMPD is CIT trained now, but it may be also a specialist.
And CIT
is Crisis Intervention Team, I'm sorry. Crisis Intervention Team. So they will respond and handle the call appropriately. The issue is, and something we want to transition from, is diverting that to the behavioral health specialist and partnering with 7 county services, where it may either dictate a non-police response, a co-police response, or a police response, without the behavioral health as well.
So that's kind of the deflection idea, right?
Yes,
so we're deflecting the call away from a police response to one of the 3 responses that you just indicated.
Yes, it's twofold. It's a 911 deflection piece, and that's what we're tasked with, and then again partnering with 7 county services. They're the ones that so the call will be sent eventually to a behavioral health hub in the 911 center, where members of 7 county services will be there. That call will be further triaged, and then if it dictates a response from 7 county services response team, mobile crisis response team that's out in the field, they will go and handle the call appropriately, again with or without a police officer.
Okay, and remind us who 7 County Services is and why their participation is so
important. They are a large group here in the area that manage behavioral health services, and we partner with them anyway. There's a crisis that we send to them through the 911 system. We notify them on certain responses as well, and they can handle. They know what to do with the behavioral health issue. They can either, prescribe medication. They can send them to what's called a respite center where they can be taken care of, or they can get them further help. The person potentially could already be in their system, so they may be able to tag them up with somebody that they may have already been consulted with before.
So all the while this is going on, if it's just their response only, our police are able to go on and just continue to do the work they're best trained to do.
Right, and it doesn't tie them up for something, some other type of more emergent type of call that they may need to go on.
But some of the criticism that you get from people is, well, you can't predict when you need the police, so they need to always be there. How do you evaluate that?
So there's a certain type of questions that the call taker will ask, and are you going to harm yourself? Do you have a weapon with you? Do you have access to a weapon? Do you plan on hurting somebody else? So if that person answers yes to any of those questions, then it's going to dictate a co-response with the police department.
So walk us through just kind of a few scenarios that would typically come into the 911.
So if somebody calls in and say they're potentially going to perform suicide, the call taker will ask, maybe it's through medication where it's not associated with any type of weapon. That will be sent over to the behavioral health specialist. Again, they'll further triage that call. They can send that mobile crisis response team out to that person's house, or if they're in the street, wherever they're at, and get them the help they need very quickly.
Okay. And so you mentioned CIT, that LMPD has been trained on that crisis intervention team. So how does the deflection approach differ than the CIT approach?
It's different than the CIT approach because you're not going to get that CIT officer. You may, depending on the type of questions that they ask for, where now you're only going to get that CIT officer, trained officer to come. Again, it could alleviate them from responding to things that they may not. We've looked at other cities, and for the most part, they're able to deflect about 60% of their calls. Some of them are able to deflect 60% of their calls without a police response, which is huge, if you think about the numbers. Citywide, like I said, we're averaging about 55 a day. So, that's a lot of calls, over a year's time period that we can deflect away from the police, even if it's 60% or more.
So we're piloting this in the LMPD's 4th Division. So we're talking about the southern part of downtown and Old Louisville. And Sergeant Pam Oberhausen has been very active in that space for a long period of time. She's very involved in the pilot deflection model. So let's hear from her.
Along with being 4th Division Patrol Sergeant, I'm also the CIT coordinator for the police department. So that's the whole reason of me being on the deflection committee in the first place, was because I'm the CIT coordinator. And they were talking about doing this with CIT runs, obviously, as kind of the tests run. So that makes sense. And the 4th Division has more CIT runs than any other division. This is where all police departments are going. I think they're all going towards a more, let's get the mental health services more connected and integrated with the police, which, again, other police departments have great relationships, I'm sure, with their mental health providers, such as we do. But let's get us more of a team, more as working side by side, not in the same car, but side by side. Let's get us working more on trying to help people. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do, is just help people. I think it'll benefit. And then, again, that frees me up to go to the more violent offense. If I have them responding to this run and can handle it, then that's great. That puts more officers on the street, ultimately, in one way or another.
So Jody, now how can the deflection model, though, help LMPD when a call comes in that's clearly a crisis that LMPD has to respond to?
So 2 ways. One, the police could go to a call that doesn't necessarily lead them to believe it's going to be a crisis type of call, and they'll be able to call back to the 911 center and request that mobile crisis response team. So they can call back if they get there, identify that it's somebody in need of 7 county services, and they'll be able to call back, and we'll be able to get them to respond that way. Or if they respond, the 911 call comes in, maybe it's somebody that is having some type of violent actions, they can get there, they can calm the scene down, and then call that mobile crisis response team once it gets under control and turn it over to them, or work with them closely to make sure that they still get the things that they need, but they're keeping them out of jail, they're keeping them out of hospitals, they're getting them in the hands of the people that can really help them out.
And that's really the main thing, right? We want to have as few people being involved with our criminal justice system as possible.
Right.
So anytime we can keep somebody out, we want to do that. So talk a little bit about how the plan came together. I know we've been studying this for quite some time.
Right.
You obviously have spent a lot of time on this. Talk about that and any kind of community input that we've received.
Well, your office tasked us, being the holder of the 911 system, for it to be in our shop, we really started to look at other cities, best practices through other cities. We got in touch with several of them. I actually got to visit one big city that is really being very successful with their program, and they have their program is almost just like the way we want to move, by having an outside agency such as 7 counties take care of that side of the response. And then, you know, there was a group from U of L and 7 County Services and Spalding that put a recommendation together for us. That was where the 4th Division came from. They recommended them. There's about 11 responses a day on average in the 4th Division. It's got the most CIT responses out of all the divisions. So obviously we wanted to start there first. And then we wanted to move the plan forward, start a pilot program for about 6 months, and then have it evaluated and go on from there.
Why don't you talk a little bit about the city you visited and what your key takeaways were from that?
I got to visit the city of Austin twice. Went down, did a preliminary visit. They were welcoming with open arms. I can't tell you how good they were to us both times that we visited. The second time, they had a 2 full-day schedule put together for us, where we got to visit the 911 center as well as go to the community health company that their 7 counties is the way I like to put it. I took a technology person down, because we have to make sure the technology is precise in getting that 911 call to the behavioral health specialist, and then tag those questions that they need to ask into that system as well, so that if they may get a question that indicates that it needs to go back to the police. So all that technology has to be there. So we were able to talk to their technology folks and see which way we need to go with that. They're a system that is just like ours as far as the numbers and things like that. They started off small, just like we did. There's a few things that we're looking to do in our system that they are anxious to see how it works as far as communications and things like that. So we're going to let them know how that works, because they may want to integrate that in their plan. So, and the young lady that runs their program had also talked about doing a quarterly work group for people that had a system in place, or people that were getting systems in place, so that we could all talk and share best practices. So there's a lot going on in the country with this subject.
Yeah, for our listeners, we're constantly benchmarking other cities, what's working, what's not working, so that we visit them, they visit us, so that we can all get better together. And these kind of learning cohorts are really invaluable.
Yes.
So we mentioned Sergeant Oberhausen, the 4th Division. How are we going to measure success here?
So we're going to partner with U of L to come in and evaluate the process. We're going to look at run volume. We're going to look at call times. We're going to look at the number of people that we're keeping out of hospitals, the number of people we're keeping out of jail, where we're diverting them, from potentially going there to other locations, or to getting the help they need. So we're going to take about 6 months to evaluate those things.
Right. All right. So let's say we've got good results. What's next?
Well, there'll be a big ask from you.
Yeah.
We'll come and ask and try to move the program into other divisions. Depending on cost, depending on resources. It'd be nice to get this countywide and citywide, over the course of the next couple of years, and it'd be a successful program.
So this is all part of making sure that we're funding our public safety in the most effective way possible.
Yes, sir.
People oftentimes, when they think of public safety, they think about more police officers. We need good constitutional policing, but we also need robustly funded other activities, and we're hoping this deflection pilot is going to expand and be one of those.
Right. Like I mentioned, the city of Austin, 60% they're deflecting, 20% is usually a co-response, and then there's just 20% that want the police to respond. So, if we get the people the help that they need, they're staying out of jail, they're staying out of the hospital, the police are able to respond on more severe emergent type of runs, it's a win-win for everybody.
Well, Director Jody Meiman, thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me.
You're a busy guy with all kinds of different responsibilities, so we appreciate your nimbleness and dexterity. All right, so folks, we backed our pledge to reimagine public safety by quadrupling our investment in violence prevention and capacity building programs, including this one, outside of the traditional law enforcement is what we're talking here. So deflection is a big part of this. We're very hopeful, and we'll report back to the community on how it's going. So thanks to everybody who's turned into this episode, and look forward to talking to you next time.